The Henderson family's annual garden party was in full swing, crystal champagne flutes catching the late afternoon sun as the city's elite mingled on manicured lawns. I stood near the fountain, sketching quietly in my worn notebook while my family did what they did best: showcase their wealth. "Oh, you're still drawing?" Cousin Emma's voice dripped with manufactured concern. She adjusted her designer dress, making sure everyone could see the label. "I thought you'd have grown out of that by now." I glanced up from my sketch, complex geometric patterns that had just sold for 8 figures, though my family didn't know that yet. "Something like that." "Such a shame," she continued, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "With your father's connections in finance, you could have been something." Dad appeared, champagne in hand. "There's still time to join the firm, sweetheart. A real career instead of these hobbies." I checked my watch. Almost time. The Metropolitan Museum's gala announcement was scheduled for 6 o'clock sharp. "The arts are fine for recreation," he continued, "but you need to think about your future. You're 32, for heaven's sake." My phone buzzed with a message from the museum director. "Ready when you are." "Actually," I said, closing my sketchbook, "I should head out. I have an event to attend." "Another little gallery showing?" Emma smirked. "How quaint." Before I could respond, the party's speakers crackled to life. Dad had installed them for important announcements. Usually stock prices or business mergers. The announcer's voice boomed across the garden. "Live from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, we're proud to announce the new modern wing, donated by our youngest billionaire patron." The crystal flute froze halfway to Emma's lips as my name echoed across the lawn. The garden party fell silent as the announcement continued, detailing the $500 million donation and my role as the leading force in digital art innovation. The same doodles they'd mocked had revolutionized the intersection of art and technology. But you've been living in that small studio," Dad stammered, his champagne forgotten. "Selling sketches online. Creating NFTs that redefine digital ownership," I corrected, pulling up my portfolio on my phone. "Those hobby pieces you laughed at? Just sold for more than Henderson Financial's quarterly profits." Emma's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide her shock. "The cryptocurrency stuff? That's not real art." "Tell that to the blockchain," I replied, showing them the latest auction results. My digital collections had just broken another record, $47 million for a single piece. The party screens, usually reserved for stock tickers, now displayed live footage from the Metropolitan Gala. My artwork dominated the new wing, massive digital installations that merged traditional techniques with quantum computing. "Those programming classes you called a waste of time?" I continued, watching their faces. "Created algorithms that generate art worth more than this entire estate. While you were counting old money, I was inventing new ways to create value." My mother appeared, her social circle forgotten. "But your apartment, your lifestyle, is exactly what inspired my most valuable series," I nodded. "Those starving artist years you pitted were spent building something beyond your understanding of wealth. Sometimes the biggest fortunes don't look like fortunes at all." The garden speakers continued broadcasting. My innovations in AI-generated art, the blockchain platforms I'd developed, the global digital art markets I'd helped create. Each achievement made my family's traditional success look increasingly obsolete. "The trust fund," Dad began weakly, "is still untouched," I cut in, showing them my crypto wallet balance. "Those wasted years in art school built something worth more than 3 generations of Henderson banking. Amazing how value changes when you stop measuring it in corner offices and country club memberships." My phone lit up with congratulations from tech pioneers and art world revolutionaries, people who'd seen the future while my family clung to traditional definitions of success. "Now," I said, gathering my sketchbook, "I have a wing to dedicate. Rather different from your usual board meetings, Dad." At the garden gate, I turned back one final time. "Oh, and Emma? About those doodles?" She looked up, face struggling to maintain composure. "Sometimes art isn't about what you can see. It's about creating something so new, the old rules don't apply." The gate closed behind me as I left them standing there, surrounded by symbols of conventional wealth that digital art had just made questionable. Through the roses, I caught one last glimpse of their faces, the same faces that had dismissed my chosen path all these years. Sometimes the biggest achievements grow in the smallest studios. And sometimes, the best revenge is letting them calculate the value they never saw coming. The Metropolitan Museum's marble halls echoed with elegance as the city's art elite gathered for the wing dedication. My family arrived late, looking distinctly uncomfortable among the avant-garde crowd, their traditional wealth suddenly seeming quaint against the backdrop of digital innovation. "Your latest piece," the museum director announced, gesturing to the central installation, "has already been bid to $89 million. I watched Dad's face as he stared at the massive digital canvas, quantum algorithms creating real-time art that responded to viewer emotions. The same technology he'd called expensive nonsense at last year's Christmas dinner. "But it's just lights and code," Emma whispered, clutching her Hermes bag like a shield. "Like your stock portfolio is just numbers?" I replied, pulling up the artwork's blockchain credentials. "These lights and code just revolutionized how value is created and stored. While you were collecting designer labels, I was inventing new forms of ownership." The museum's screens displayed my global impact: digital art platforms democratizing creativity, AI systems discovering new aesthetic patterns, blockchain networks reshaping the very concept of value. "Those coding boot camps," my sister Catherine ventured, her voice uncertain, "the ones we thought were distracting you from real art, created the algorithms now powering billion-dollar digital art markets," I finished, watching another bid flash across the screens. "Sometimes the most valuable brushstrokes are written in Python." The gala crowd moved through my installations, traditional collectors mingling with tech billionaires, all drawn to art that existed simultaneously in physical and digital spaces. My family huddled together, looking increasingly out of place in their conservative evening wear. "But the foundations of wealth," Dad began, falling back on his usual lecture, "are changing," I cut in, directing his attention to the real-time trading displays. "These pieces aren't just art, they're entire economic ecosystems. Each pixel represents more innovation than a century of traditional banking." Mom touched one of the interactive surfaces, gasping as the artwork responded to her presence. "This is what you were trying to explain at those family dinners? When you were all too busy discussing hedge funds to listen?" "Yes." I showed her the underlying technology, quantum computers processing beauty in ways traditional art never imagined. "Those wasted hours in the studio were spent building the future of creative value." The museum director approached with another announcement. "Your NFT collection just hit $2 billion in total sales." Emma nearly dropped her champagne. $2 billion. Amazing what happens when you stop measuring success by last century's standards. I smiled, watching the numbers climb. "Those dinner table lectures about real investments seem rather quaint now, don't they?" Catherine stared at the crowds gathering around my work. "The collectors you mentioned are reshaping the global art market as we speak," I nodded. "While you were chasing old money at charity galas, I was building new ways to validate and trade creativity itself." The massive screens displayed my latest innovation: art that evolved through artificial intelligence, each piece unique and valuable in ways traditional markets couldn't comprehend. "Your trust fund," Dad tried again, "is being donated to digital art education," I replied, showing him the foundation's plans. "So other artists can build futures you won't understand until they're worth billions." The gala reached its peak as the final installation was unveiled, a piece that merged traditional painting with quantum computing, creating something entirely new. The bid counter spun past 9 figures as my family watched in stunned silence. "Sometimes," I told them, accepting another round of congratulations from tech pioneers, "the best investment is believing in something new, even when everyone at the country club calls it a waste of time." The evening wound down, leaving my family to contemplate their champagne among artwork worth more than their combined portfolios. Their world of conventional wealth suddenly seemed small against the backdrop of digital innovation. "The Henderson name," Dad said quietly, "now stands for something more than banking," I finished. "Sometimes the greatest legacy is creating value no one else can see, until suddenly they can't see anything else." A week after the Met Gala, I found my family in unexpected places. Dad was in his study, surrounded not by financial reports, but by books on digital art and blockchain technology. His Bloomberg terminal displayed NFT trading volumes instead of stock prices. The quantum algorithms in your latest piece, he said without looking up. I've been trying to understand. The same ones you called a waste of computing power at Thanksgiving? I smiled, settling into the leather chair across from him. They're reshaping how we perceive and value creativity. The study screens now displayed real-time art transactions. Billions flowing through digital spaces traditional finance couldn't comprehend. Your mother, Dad said quietly, found your old sketchbooks in the attic. The ones from before art school. When you said I should focus on practical skills? I nodded. Those early experiments with digital patterns became the foundation of what we're doing now. Sometimes impractical dreams build the most practical futures. My phone buzzed with another auction alert. My latest piece had just broken another record, making headlines in both art and tech worlds. Catherine enrolled in a digital art course, Dad continued, almost whispering. And Emma requested access to our NFT platform. I finished. I know. She's been sending me questions about crypto wallets at midnight. Turns out even socialites can learn new skills when billions are involved. The study's mahogany walls now reflected the glow of digital art streams, a stark contrast to the old oil portraits of Henderson patriarchs. Each pixel represented more cultural and financial value than our family had accumulated in generations. I found your college thesis, Mom said, entering with a worn folder. The one about merging traditional art with quantum computing. The one you called too experimental for serious collectors? I smiled gently. It's now the theoretical framework behind systems managing the largest digital art marketplace in history. Sometimes the most radical ideas create the most lasting value. My phone lit up with another milestone. Our platform had just facilitated an art transaction that would have been impossible in traditional markets. Your brother's gallery, Dad began carefully. Applied for partnership this morning, I nodded. Along with every other institution that called digital art a passing fad last year. Amazing how billion-dollar valuations change perspectives. The screens showed another auction starting, our AI systems redefining creativity while traditional collectors slept. I've been thinking, Dad set down his blockchain guide, about what you said about seeing value differently. And I never saw it, he admitted. Any of it. The innovation, the potential, the future you were building. Too focused on protecting old wealth to see the new forms you were creating. Mom touched one of my digital pieces floating on the screen. These patterns, they're extraordinary. Like quantum mathematics made visible, I agreed. But instead of formulas, we're using creativity to build something revolutionary. Those computer science electives you worried were distracting me from real art? Actually helped me see beauty in code. Catherine appeared at the door, tablet in hand. The NFT tutorial you sent. I have questions. About blockchain verification in digital art? I smiled. The same concept you called unnecessarily complicated at last month's benefit. She nodded, looking genuinely interested for the first time in years. The family legacy, Dad said slowly, it's not what I thought it was, is it? It's whatever we dare to imagine, I replied, pulling up our global impact metrics. While you were preserving old values, we created new ones. Those digital experiments you dismissed are helping democratize art ownership worldwide. My phone buzzed with updates from our art education initiative, bringing digital creativity to communities traditional galleries never reached. There's still time, I told them, watching art and technology merge on our screens. To build something that matters. Like what? Mom asked softly. Like a family that values innovation over tradition. Where success isn't measured by gallery openings but by creative impact. Where even old collectors can learn new ways of seeing. The study filled with the soft glow of digital art worth more than our family had ever imagined. Through the window, the sun set on an art world our platforms were quietly revolutionizing. Welcome to the real future of creativity, I said, watching their faces shift from confusion to wonder. Now who's ready to learn about quantum aesthetics? Dad picked up his digital art guide again, this time with purpose. Mom studied the flowing patterns with an artist's eye. Catherine opened her tablet, ready to explore. The next morning I found a small package outside my studio door. Inside was Dad's prized possession. His first stock certificate from 1980, now framed alongside one of my early digital sketches from high school. A note read, "Sometimes value isn't in what we hold on to, but in what we're brave enough to reimagine." Your doodles didn't just change the art world. They changed how your old man sees everything. Dad. I hung it in my studio, right next to the screens displaying my latest work. An AI-generated piece that used stock market data to create evolving digital landscapes. The old certificate's faded paper contrasted beautifully with the dynamic pixels. A perfect metaphor for our family's transformation. Later that day, Emma sent a surprising message. She'd sold her designer handbag collection to invest in digital art education for underprivileged kids. "You showed me that true value isn't in what we wear," she wrote, "but in what we help create." Catherine's Gallery announced its first all-digital exhibition, featuring emerging artists using blockchain technology. Mom started a weekly salon where traditional collectors could learn about NFTs and quantum art. Sometimes the biggest revolutions start with a simple sketch. And sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't what we're given, but what we dare to create. The old Henderson fortune may have been built on banking, but its future would be painted in pixels, coded in creativity, and valued in ways the country club could never calculate.